Man, they sure were giants.
I remember them being much bigger.
Back in the late 70s, some of the most popular shows on TV were superhero programs. So in 1978, with the success of The Incredible Hulk, Marvel Comics wanted to get another comic on TV, mostly because they wanted a greater share of what they were getting from The Incredible Hulk, about $25,000 an episode. I'm not sure why they chose to push Doctor Strange at the time, even though Spider-Man would get a series a little later, and then there was those Red Brown Captain America films which were special. Well, anyway, Marvel went to CBS and CBS produced a 2-hour movie as a backdoor pilot for a new series. It tanked. It was a bit of a bug nuts mess though. Now, if you want to see a couple great reviews about that 1978 movie, then check out Nash on www.channelawesome.com and the Now Playing Podcast review of that film at nowplayingpodcast.com. They're both entertaining. Even though it wasn't successful, about 14 years later, Full Moon Features had the Doctor Strange film rights and was going to produce a movie, or a TV show perhaps. Well, apparently right before they started filming, the rights reverted back to Marvel, and Marvel didn't re-up with them. So, with the money spent but no rights, they did the only thing they could, do a quick rewrite and make a Doctor Strange film that isn't a Doctor Strange film. But before I go any further, here's some backstory. A quick origin of Doctor Strange. Dr. Stephen Strange was a pompous, egotistical neurosurgeon who one day got into a car accident that damaged the nerves in his hands. He then spent his entire fortune on crackpot cures. He eventually made his way to the Ancient One in the Himalayas. While the Ancient One didn't cure his hands, he did give Strange life a new purpose by training him to be the next Sorcerer Supreme. Now, if you'd like to learn more about that, then check out my superhero profile on him at the D.R. Harris YouTube channel. Shameless plug. Is any of this important? Nah. Well, now okay then, let's see how this film diverges from the Doctor Strange mythos. Well, the back of the Blu-ray says, 2 beings from another dimension, 2 sorcerers with immeasurable powers. One has sworn to destroy the Earth, the other has vowed to protect it. Their timeless battle has crossed over from the 4th dimension, and only one man will reign in the end. Dr. Mordrid is the chosen guardian who can protect the Earth from the eternal darkness. Cabal is his vengeful enemy who, implacably, wrath has escalated with time. Cabal has arrived on Earth, planning to use his infinite powers to unleash a horde of hellish demons to devour and destroy humankind. Bound by hate and a mystical amulet that holds the power of life and death, the immortal wizards will meet for the last time. Their centuries-old rivalry has matured into an ancient struggle of good versus evil. Now their battle takes on majestic proportions as Mordrid and Cabal give life to prehistoric skeletons and begin their final conflict. Okay, now let's take a look at the film itself and see how it's the same yet different from the mythos. The movie begins with a long panning the room shot with music that sounds like bootleg Indiana Jones. This sets the wrong tone. The music should be more ominous, like or if you want to go against type, how about something ridiculously non-generic like the film actually begins with "Wah!" A giant pair of unblinking eyes. It's here where we meet the titular Dr. Mordrid, played by Mr. Jeffrey Jones of Reanimator, From Beyond, and Beethoven's Treasure Trail fame. Mordrid is getting a pep talk from this movie stand-in for the Ancient One, the Monitor. Why did they go this way? In the comics, the Ancient One is a compassionate, wise, powerful Asian man, not a pair of disembodied eyes in front of a bad UHF background. Well, anyway, we're told he needs to defend the Earth from the Death's Head. Over the next few minutes, we get to see this movie's villain, who is a mixture of the Lost Boys and the late 1990s WWE. He kills an armored car driver for really bad silver sprayed on boxes. Wait a minute, I got eyeglasses like that from the eye doctor's office once. Anyway, After that scene, I began to get the sneaking suspicion that this was supposed to be yet another TV pilot, because instead of seeing Mordrid's Sanctum Sanctorum, we get to see him in an apartment building with his wacky neighbors. We also get to meet this movie's love interest, who is kinda a cop. It's her job to solve creepy occult-like cases, one of which she's discussing with her pervy boss. It actually sounds more interesting than the plot of this movie, but anyway, she winds up attending one of Mordrid's lectures in order to get some help, I think, on this new case.
Always remarks, there must be a full moon tonight. Which explains what you're all doing here.
Stop that, you're only encouraging him. I will say that I like they kept this part of the Doctor Strange lore intact. See, the world at large doesn't know that the good doctor is the Sorcerer Supreme, but they do know him as 1. A world-renowned surgeon, and 2. The world's top occult specialist. Well, over the next few minutes, we see Mordrid change clothes, cast a spell, speak with the monitor, burn his apartment, and then go a la Lupita's evil-looking castle in the sky to meet a friend and toss exposition back and forth at each other. I understand the point of the scene, but it feels kind of pointless. What we learned is a villain has escaped and wants to create a Philosopher's Stone. Certain bits of information are just kind of skipped, while some scenes are needlessly stretched via exposition so the film can reach its running time. I assume this was done because of the budget, but really, couldn't the filmmakers have found a more creative way of doling out information without spending a lot of money? Also, considering the time period, the early 90s, and the amount of money spent on the special effects, these special effects were pretty serviceable. The special effects were done by David Allen, who worked on Young Sherlock Holmes in the 1980s, and he was nominated for an Oscar for it. Another positive is the miniature work is excellent and pretty impressive in how they incorporated it into the action and non-action scenes. As far as Yvette Nepar's role as Samantha, I assume she's supposed to be the love interest, but early on there's hardly any interaction between her and Mordrid. They don't get any real time together until more than 20 minutes in. That said, their first real interaction is understandably, yet predictably, awkward. Over the next few minutes, we see Cabal meet a couple of his only disciples, and he later on sacrifices one of them for unknown reasons in what I suppose is supposed to be a sexy scene. And then he leaves to jabber with Mordrid for a few minutes, more exposition, and then suddenly Mordrid is arrested and brought to the precinct out of nowhere, and then Samantha and her boss talk about Mordrid in a scene that didn't happen on camera. Well, eventually Mordrid shares his and Cabal's origin with her while making a napkin dance. We spend the next 5 to 10 minutes with Mordrid trying to get his amulet back from the cops because most of his powers come from it. Okay. In the comics, Doctor Strange does get a big portion of his powers from his magical adornments, but he's not as defenseless as Mordrid is here. Even without them, he is one of the most powerful sorcerers in the Marvel Universe. Well, anyway, Cabal sends his last and only disciple to cause a minor ruckus. And what's-her-name steals Mordrid's amulet and frees him in order to search for Cabal, who is being very creepy to a little old lady on a bench. FYI, it's not the last time he'll be creepy in the next 5 minutes. Question: with all the fighting and incantations that's happening, why did it take so long for the security to hear this and come running? Alright, the film apexes and climaxes right here with both sorcerers taking control of some dinosaur skeletons in a stop-motion fight to the finish. Cabal is defeated the way you expect. Of course, the conflict isn't really over until someone gets kicked in the balls. The film ends with the monitor calling Mordrid away to leave the Earth forever, only to have him return, so there's a happy ending. Question: Mordrid's still wanted by the police, right? So how is he gonna get himself out of this one? Also, he owns the building, right? Won't the cops seize that as well? Oh well, roll credits. The film is barely 70 minutes long, and there are interesting cuts that tell me that this movie was supposed to be made for TV, except there is a moment of nudity that comes out nowhere and several harsh expletives tossed around that will get you either an R or a really hard PG-13 rating. Also, there are scenes where, for no reason other than maybe dramatic, but more than likely to stretch out the length of the film, that are slowed down. Location-wise, this was filmed in LA even though it's supposed to be set in New York City, and they use a lot of the same sets and locations over and over again, but they did the most that they could with the budget that they had. So do I give this a recommend? Yes. It had decent action and the acting was pretty good, even though the direction and editing was a bit off at times, even coming off as it was a bad TV movie. I do have to give props to the producer and director of the film for taking this completely seriously. It's obvious that they put a ton of their heart and effort into this. Heck, they even got Jack the King Kirby to do some character designs for this film. Also, picking Jeffrey Combs was a good choice. Albert and Charlie Band knew Jeffrey Combs since they worked with him in the 80s with Reanimator. He was also able to spout out the dialogue and make it sound believable. Plus, he gave Mordrid an air of mystery and sympathy. Getting an Oscar-nominated special effects person as well as a well-known composer, Richard Brand, was also a good thing, even though Richard Brand is also the son of the producer, so there may be some nepotism there as well. So yeah, these guys weren't messing around. Oh, don't get me wrong, it's a complete bastardization of the Doctor Strange lore, but if you didn't know about the Good Doctor, and most don't sadly, this would still be a entertaining film and it has some really fun moments. That said, I don't think this would have worked as a TV series. One, it's too expensive and the film costs $2 million, which is cheap by theatrical film standards, but too expensive for a weekly series. But guess what? This was intended as a movie franchise based on behind-the-scenes interviews. I can only assume a reason why a sequel wasn't made was because of the high cost of the film, and it probably didn't make its money back. But transfers did? Okay. It does make me wonder though, if the bands had been able to retain the Doctor Strange film rights, what would that film look like? Oh well, I can't wait to see the real Doctor Strange film. Until next time, remember to read more comic books from around the world and watch more 2D and stop motion animated films. Venture on.